Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. Before we get into this, make sure you're liking and subscribing. Let's do that before we kick these videos off. Today we're going to be talking about starting your Necrons army. Now primarily this video is going to be geared towards beginners or people that are looking towards Necrons. But if you're already a Necrons player, then there may be a few things that you do still find informative. But let's get into this. In fact, let's get into this. So you basically decided as a new 40k player or just a different faction, and you want to start something fresh like Necrons. You've decided you want to get involved with the Necrons faction, and you want to dip your toe in. You want to see what it's all about. What is Necrons all about? I'm going to be showing you what you need to play. I want to give you some starter ideas for maybe starter lists, things that you could potentially buy. Maybe there's some box set ideas. And then I'll kind of steer you into some quick tips and ideas where you can start to explore the faction itself. So first of all, what do you need when starting Necrons? Now, like most factions, you're going to need a few things. First of all, you're going to need your Necrons Codex. Now, some of the Codex is slightly out of date. That's always going to be the case. Games Workshop love to give you a book, sell you a book, and then 3 months later they'll give you a PDF completely changing things. So there are things here and there that are slightly different, but the majority of the book is still fine. Now, you don't necessarily need a codex. I've just put this in as something you could have. The main thing I believe you need is the datasheet cards. They're very handy as a quick reference in your games, especially when there's like stats and things. There's a million stats to remember, right? Even I still forget the stats nowadays. It's just nice to have. And also for your opponent, they might want to see things. So having the date cards is really handy. And of course the 40k app, or the Warhammer 40k app, which is free to download on the App Store or wherever you're getting your apps. You've got reference to rules as well as the data cards if you've paid for the codex, which is why the codex was slightly important, because you get the code that unlocks the data cards in the app. So there's a few things that are quite important if you're starting any faction, but this is Necron specific. So, understanding how Necrons play, that's sort of the next section of this video. How do we play? How do Necrons play as a faction? Pretty durable. I'd say they're sort of bordering along, not quite the elite level, but they're not far from it. I wouldn't class them as elite. They're not quite custodes or anything like that, but they're not far from that. But they're very durable. They're mostly shooty. We do have a bit of melee, don't get me wrong. We've got some destroyers, we've got some katana and things like that, but majority of the units are going to be shooty. We've got a good range of models, which is always very nice to kind of differentiate your play style. And when the meta changes here and there, you can kind of go into different units and then they become good for a bit. So that's always a bonus. If you've got a small number of units, it's always a bit sucky because you kind of can't deviate to other units as much. On the tournament scene, we're normally quite competitive. At the moment, I don't believe we are. I think the last figures I saw, I think we were sort of in the lower third of things, but things can change in an instant. So don't hold your breath on that and don't take my word on that. We could be top by the time you watch this video. So, but in general, I'd say we're quite competitive. The last thing is, kind of going back to the first point, we're not elite, but we're slightly elite. We're not like Horde, unless you're playing Silvertide. If you want to go with loads of warriors and immortals, that's a whole different avenue, which you could go, so it's another option. But majority of your list is going to be slightly more geared to the elite side, but again, not custodes. Now, a few benefits and advantages for using Necrons as your faction. Well, I've got a few on the screen for you. We are one of the easiest factions to actually paint. There's a few schemes, and you pretty much go in silver, or you're doing your own thing potentially. But there's a can of silver spray that you can spray on, or you can dry brush it on, put a few different highlights on, and then you're kind of done. It's quite easy. Whereas if you're looking at other factions that are a little bit more difficult, so in terms of your time and maybe how many paints you need to buy, and your skill level, it's more on the easier side, so that's definitely a benefit if you're starting Necrons. We've got lots of box set options. Of course, everyone's got a combat patrol, but if you go back onto some of the older boxes, which will be available on certain websites, we've got quite a number of boxes that you can go for, which is in effect just going to save you money So if you kind of research what's in what box first and then look at the total cost, you'll realise, yeah, you're saving a bit of money doing that. So it's definitely worth looking at. And we're always getting lots of new releases. We're not quite Space Marine level, you know, we're not the cash cow of Games Workshop, but Necrons are sort of up there with the new releases. Games Workshop do tend to show a little bit of love for Necrons. I mean, only recently we've had Orokin the Diviner, we've had the Overlord with the Translocation Shroud, and Imitate the Stormlord as well. And I'd imagine in the not too distant future we'll potentially get like Catan, maybe Trazyn the Infinite, I don't know. But that's sort of speculation, so don't take my word on that. But at the moment we're getting a few decent releases, and that I would imagine would continue on. So you want to buy some models. Let's get into some box sets that you could take advantage of. The main one here is the Combat Patrol box, which has a Canoptic Doomstalker, an Overlord, some Scorpion Destroyers, and 10 Warriors with some Scarabs. I would recommend buying 2 boxes because then you fill up your Warrior squad to 20, you could potentially fill up your Scarab squad to 6, you're filling up your Scorpion Destroyers to 6, and then you're getting 2 Doomstalkers, which is always handy. Combat Patrol is a decent option. It's not a bad box. At the moment, we're also able to get the Royal Court, which has the Scorpion Lord, the Reanimator, the Plasmancer, and the Cryptothralls. Now, I believe all of these models are not available on their own, which is a bit of an oddball. Why aren't they available on their own? It's odd. So you're kind of forced into getting this box. I mean, I got my stuff from the Indominus box, which was going back a few years now. I think it was like between the 8th and 9th edition, there was this limited edition box and it had all these models in, so I was a little bit lucky with that. But if you're starting now, 2025, this is probably the box you need if you want to get these models in. And all these models here are usable. The Scorpion Lord and the Plasmancer especially are very good. They're sort of A-tier material, and the other 2 are decent as well. We've got the Kill Team box, which is the Heroic Circle. I haven't bought this box. It's mainly for Kill Team, which I don't personally play, and I already had all these models. But you get Death Marks, which could be Immortals if you wanted to. You get a Technomancer, you get some, what are they? They're like Canoptic Reanimator things. And then there's another guy that I don't actually know what he is. Let me have a look. What is that thing? There's another dude there that I can spot. He is like a Prentech. I don't know what you could proxy him as. Just a Cryptech, I suppose. That's a potential box set that you can get where you get your Death Marks or your Immortals and a Technomancer all in one. There's the Hypercrypt Legion box, which you could probably find on eBay, I'd imagine. I don't think this is available anymore. This was a weird box because you're only going to buy it once if you were to buy it, because it's got the Void Dragon, and the Void Dragon is an epic hero. So you can't buy it. Well, you could buy it twice and sell the Void Dragon, but I bet a lot of people are doing that, so it kind of devalued the Void Dragon slightly. You're getting 10 Warriors and you're getting 10 Praetorians. Praetorians aren't the best, and Warriors also aren't the best, so this box, I don't recommend it, but if you were into those kind of units, then yeah, go for it. So yeah, they're the box sets that you could be looking at. The Combat Patrol, I think, is the pick of the bunch, and I would buy 2 of them. So let's move into some list builds then. You ideally want to start at 500 points if you're new to the faction. You want to dip your toe in just to make sure that it is the right faction for you. The last thing you want to do is spend a crap load of money on Necrons and then not like them. So you want to dip your toe in, get familiar with them. 500 points is about where you want to be. Now if you grab that Combat Patrol box set, at this moment in time, that is 445 points. That doesn't include any enhancements or whatever. So what you could do is you could maybe buy a Locust Heavy Destroyer, which is 55 points, and that will get you to 500 points. And there's your starter set right there. A little bit of anti-tank, a little bit of battle line, a leader, and some melee stuff. It's a good all-round list, a bit of shooty, a bit of melee, a bit of OC, to get you going. And that would be at a reasonable price because it's the Combat Patrol box. And then you get the Locust Heavy Destroyer as well, of course. Now, if you want to expand to the 1,000 points, if you've said, you know what, Necrons is for me, this is my kind of faction, you then need to expand to 1,000 points, the incursion level. So I've got on the screen now the kind of units you probably should look at if you wanted to play on the more competitive side. So if you want units that are going to score well, you're looking at Death Marks, Hexmark Destroyers, Tomb Blades, Flayed Ones, or Ophidian Destroyers. They're the kind of units that will score secondaries pretty well. If you wanted some melee units, You've got the Scorpion Destroyers, which you already had some of those in the Combat Patrol, but maybe you want to fill the unit and get the leader as well, which is a Scorpion Lord. You're looking at the Lich Guard, Canoptic Wraiths, Flayed Ones again, and Canoptic Spiders. They're the kind of melee units that are pretty good. They're not bad. If you wanted to go into the more heavy hitting units, the anti-tank stuff, the Katana are always good. They can shoot, they can fight, they can do a bit of everything. The Silent King is very good at the moment, especially in the Star Shatter Arsenal, which is one of the detachments. Doomsday Arcs, which are probably the best unit in the Codex right now. Points for points, in my opinion. Monoliths, of course, the big bread and butter of the Necrons. And Locust Heavy Destroyers again, which I've just damaged 6. They're pretty good at shooting and at range as well. So yeah, they're the kind of units I would look towards if you wanted to be a bit more competitive with your Necrons. Now next I'm going to get into the general playstyles for Necrons. I briefly mentioned playstyles in the intro, but I wanted to get a little bit more involved in this section. You can go for like the shooty stuff if you want a really shooty Necron faction. Locust Heavy Destroyers, Doomsday Arcs, Locust Destroyers, they're probably the 3 top units that can shoot that you would build on. Maybe you build, you know, multiple units of each rather than just have singles, but that's when you're talking about 2,000 points now. Maybe you're not there yet, but they're the kind of units that you would want to get in your list if you wanted to go really shooty. If you wanted to go down the melee build, the Scorpion Destroyers, definitely. They're probably the best melee option we've got, bar the Catan, but this is purely melee. Lich Guard are always good as well. I'd probably recommend the shields. In the image I've got them with the War Scythes. The shields are probably better for a beginner especially, because you get the Invuln Save. They're a bit more durable. Not as aggressive, but sometimes you don't want that. And then the Canoptic Wraiths, which I think are a top tier unit at the moment when you add a Technomancer to that unit. Extremely durable and good in melee. You could go down the Canoptic route. So you want to purely base your Necrons on Canoptic units and Cryptex, which would be for the Canoptic Court, which is another one of the detachments within this codex. You could add the Plasmancer and then add in with some Immortals, so that will make the entire unit Cryptek. So that would apply to the Canoptic Court. Canoptic Doomstalkers, very good. 3 damage weapons, always handy in the Canoptic Court when you're re-rolling all your hit rolls. And again, those Canoptic Wraiths with the Technomancer, extremely useful in the Canoptic Court. If you wanted to go down the Destroyer route, if that's what's attracted you to Necrons, again you've got the Scorpion Destroyers, again you've got the Locust Destroyers, and you could add the Hexamite. There's quite a lot of Destroyer units in the Codex, and there is a detachment for them, but there's multiple in fact, but one of them in particular is the Annihilation Legion, which is a Destroyer and Flayed Ones only kind. Well, it's not only, you're not limited to those units, but all the rules apply to Destroyers and Flayed Ones. Now, I personally would recommend using the Awakened Dynasty with my Destroyers, or with your Destroyers even. They just seem to be better, especially when they're led with a Scorpion Lord or a Locust Lord. They just seem to do better for me, but yeah, have some fun with it and work out which one you think is the better option. You can go with the Silver-Tide list, which is all your little infantry bodies, and we can get warriors in units of 20, so you could have literally 6 lots of 20 because they're battle line, and you can stick some leaders in there. Royal Wardens to fall back and shoot, fall back and charge, Overlords with the Resurrection Orbs to be healing them back, Reanimators to give them extra D3 with a reanimation roll. That's all quite good. It's not my cup of tea, but a lot of players do like the old school Silver-Tide lists with just loads of Immortals, loads of Warriors. Yeah, it is fun though, it is fun. Or you go down the heavy build. I mean, the heavy build is the big Titanic stuff, or just the Silent King. He's not Titanic, but he's still a big boy. The Tesseract Bolt I've added here, the Monolith again I've added here. Big models, lots of wounds, lots of damage output. Yeah, they're kind of like the centre of attention in a battle. So you can go down that route. And Catan, you can never forget Catan. We've got 3 named Catan, and then we've got the Transcendent Catan. I've left one out now. Which one have I left out? The Deceiver. The Deceiver isn't on the screen at the moment, but we've got 4 Catan in total. The Transcendent Catan is not an epic hero, so you can take 3 of him, which is cool. So in actual fact, you can have 6. You can have 6 Catan in the list, if the points permit. I don't know what the points are, but yeah, maybe if you're playing the bigger games, the Onslaught games, you could fit 6 and a Vault as well. And then the last kind of playstyle I wanted to mention here is the light vehicle build. We've got a lot of vehicles within the Necrons Codex, all of them with in-run saves apart from the Monolith and the Obelisk. I believe they're the two. Oh, and the Flyers, the aircraft don't have either, which is a little bit unfortunate, but is what it is. But we've got Annihilation Barges, Command Barges, Triax Stalkers, the two Flyers we just mentioned, the Monolith, the Obelisk, the Volts, and the Silent King, the Spiders and the Reanimators. They're also classed as vehicles. We've got a lot of light vehicles, and having that 4+ save on them. In fact, the Reanimator and the Spider don't have in ones either, but I kind of forget they are sometimes. They should be monsters for me. But yeah, the lighter vehicles like the Barges and the Stalker, they are going to have the in-1 save. The Doomstalker is another one, in fact, with the in-1 save. So you get a bit of durability. You get not the best toughness. They're normally like toughness 8, toughness 9. Not the greatest, but that's why they're called light vehicles. They're not too expensive. You're talking like 105 to 120 points, depending on which one it is. But you get a little bit for it, and the durability is a massive factor when you're playing Necrons. Next, I wanted to go into the detachments. Just to touch upon the 6 detachments we've got. Now, in the codex, you will only see 5, because we got one as a PDF file, which was done in 2024, well, Christmas 2024. We got another one, which was the Star Shatter Arsenal. So you won't find that in the codex. But on the Warhammer community webpage, you will find it on the downloads page there for free. So you can print it out, do what you want with it. Now with the 6 detachments, I've already touched upon a few of them in this video. The Awakened Dynasty is primarily built around leaders of units. So you're gaining buffs when you've got leaders within your units. It's a fairly balanced detachment, especially good for beginners. I actually use it as my main detachment because I think it's got a really good balance of stratagems and enhancements. So yeah, I would probably start there as a beginner. The Canoptic Court is also obviously good for the Canoptic units and the Cryptex. Getting a lot of rerolls. It's quite aggressive because you want to take over certain areas of the battlefield to be able to gain more rerolls or better rerolls to hits and stuff. That's a decent detachment, a lot of fun, but you are restricted to a certain amount of units. The Hypercrypt Legion is super fun because you can pull units off the battlefield if they're not within engagement range and then bring them back on in your next turn. So that's a lot of fun, and that applies to every unit. You can do it with every unit. Loads of fun there. The Annihilation Legion, we said it already, it's more to do with destroyers and flayed ones. Mainly focused on the melee side of it, although there is a few shooty perks, but mainly it's all the melee stuff. So the Scorpion Destroyers are an absolute must in that detachment. The Obeisance Phalanx is to do with the Silent King, the Overlords with the Noble keyword, the Triarch units and the Lichguard units. Those units gain a +1 to wound against a certain unit that you've selected for that battle round. You are slightly restricted in that detachment, but you don't have to take those units. It's just that those units are going to gain the buffs, and also from the stratagems as well. And enhancements only work on the Overlords. So a little bit restricted, but not massively. And the Star Shatter Arsenal, which is the new flavour of the month kind of thing. All the mounted stuff and vehicles gain assault, so they can advance and still fire. And everything, including the non-vehicles and mounted stuff, get a +1 to hit against enemy units on objectives, which is quite cool. The stratagems I find a bit more flaky because some of them cost 2 CP. So it's a little bit more, it's not so much for beginners, I don't believe. So yeah, as a beginner, I think you would go towards the Awakened Dynasty. Or maybe the Canoptic Court. I think that's a good one as well. Those two, kind of straightforward. The next thing I wanted to mention in this video is understanding synergy. Like most factions, there's a lot of synergy in the game, which is going to give you buffs or give your opponent debuffs for their units. And you need to learn them and understand them. Now, I'll probably be having a video out, or maybe even the last video, in fact, where we're doing loads of different combinations. So check that video out if you haven't already. But I'll give you one as an example now. Having a Necron Overlord with My Will Be Done allows his unit to have a reduced cost to their stratagem use. So it reduced by 1. Normally stratagems are 1 CP, so it basically means they're free. Now you stick in with some Lichguard, and those Lichguard are now going to have a free strat use. But in reverse, there's some reverse synergy. If you've got a noble like an Overlord in the Lichguard unit, then the Lichguard have their ability, which is Guardian Protocols, where if you've got a noble in the unit, if the attacking model that's attacking your Lichguard have a strength greater than their toughness of toughness 5, then it's a -1 to their wound roll, -1 to your opponent's wound roll, which is pretty cool. So you're kind of getting perks both ways there because of the synergy. Now before I end this video, I just wanted to make a little note of models that may get an update. Again, this is just speculation. I have absolutely no evidence whatsoever. It's just my gut feeling. The Catans, not the Void Dragon of course, but the other 3 Catans, they're probably due something. I don't know when, especially the Nightbringer, because it's so small yet it packs such a punch in comparison to the Void Dragon, which is a huge model. So I would imagine in the not too distant future, it could be 10th, don't get me wrong, but I'd imagine they replaced him and the Deceiver. The Transcendent Catan, I'm not entirely sure because it comes as a part of the Tesseract Bolt kit, and that means they'd have to redo that kit too. That might be a bigger job. But the Nightbringer and the Deceiver, I could see things happening at some point. Trazyn the Infinite, he's an old Overlord kind of model. Now, if you're looking at previous evidence, they got rid of Anrakir the Traveller and they got rid of the other dude. What's the other dude called? Why have I forgot the other dude's name? I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments what guy it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But they got put to Legends, so they weren't usable in tournaments anymore. In your friendly games, you can still use them. There is a data card available on the Warhammer community page. I've got a feeling Trazyn could go there if he doesn't get a new model, because as he currently is, he's on a small base and the rules aren't that good. He's kind of a D tier kind of unit. I could see him getting something or not, or just going completely. Locust Destroyers, I've kind of put a question mark because I hope they don't change them, because I've just gone and bought 18 of them. But the models kind of aren't fit for purpose. They're too heavy for the stands and they break. They just snap off the stands. It doesn't work. They need to do something with them, in honesty, because it's a feel bad when they kind of snap off the stands and you're left with a load of bases and a load of destroyers and you kind of can't refit them. You super glue them on and then, you know, after one game they've kind of snapped again. So I can see them doing something with the destroyers. Again, zero evidence, just my hunch. So guys, that is a video on how to start Necrons. Briefly, that is. Although this has been going on for, how long have I gone here? Nearly 30 minutes. Not so brief. But yeah, guys, if you've got anything to add for other players, let them know down in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe on your exits for more Necrons content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.